All right, good day. Good day to everyone. Nice to be back and alive for another Friday foray into the OSR Reddit. Though, first, a couple of programming notes. Uh, Number one, well, I guess it's really one note. Starting a new job next week. I have no idea what my schedule is going to be like. I don't know what my day to day kind of workflow, when I'll be able to sort of take breaks and all the stuff, yada, yada, yada. It's probably going to start off fairly slow. I've already gotten that indication that they're not really ready for me, even though they kind of want me to start. Not really ready. So I might be able to have some time I can just kind of bank away. But on an ongoing basis, I might need to reconfigure things for these kind of daily streams. May not be able to do the daily streams, might have to do them later in the day or earlier in the day. Figure something out. Lincoln says they started a new job this week. Hey, congratulations. Hope it has been a smooth transition for you. I'm hoping it'll be a smooth transition for me. I've never started something in this kind of way during COVID, so there's a lot of things I don't know about sort of how much I'm going to be remote, how in-office hours are going to work. There's just a ton I don't know. And unfortunately, it seems like they don't really know either. Everyone's kind of figuring things out. So be ready for either a period of time where I'm just not going to have these daily streams, unfortunately, or it might be I realize, I don't have anything to do because literally I won't. I'm sure there'll be time where I don't have anything that I even can do. And I might, on the spur of the moment, throw up a stream. So apologies in advance for that kind of fiddle faddle. Hopefully once I can get settled in a few weeks, I can sort of ponder how best to approach this. But let's see, someone else in the chat. Lincoln also says, same thing, super weird. Went to the office first day, remote otherwise. Yeah. There might be someone that I could imagine maybe they might reach out and say, hey, could you come in at least to pick up your laptop? I presume they'll have a laptop for me. Usually with the companies I've worked at since I'm working in, I wouldn't say not like super secret information, but still having access to stuff that's for security reasons, that they wouldn't want me just to access it even on a VPN from my own computer, that they'll have something for me, but I don't know. Maybe the first couple days they won't. I have no idea. So that's that, but I am excited to start that next phase. Heck, I wish I could just do this, but I'm not there yet. Maybe someday far away. All right. Now, one other thing. So before I get to the OSR Reddit, I did find this article through the OSR Discord, which is another great resource. Folks just get super deep into a lot of things. Really interesting. I participate a little there, not too much, but it's great kind of reading, and a lot of great articles and things and blog pieces get thrown up there. This one that I'm about to pop up on the screen. I guess let me just go ahead and pop it up on the screen. There we go. I'll move myself down there. This one's interesting because it really does pertain to hex map sort of overland campaign play. That's something that is a topic that is very much pertains to the channel, to the kind of content I make. So I thought it would be a really good one to read, and I think it shows some lessons. This is a really great article because it basically goes through this person's journey through sort of cartography and map making and just how it fits into their GM gaming flow, how it's evolved over time, and lessons they've learned from it along the way. Hey, Jacob Marks says the OSR Discord can be a little overwhelming for me. Lots of great stuff on there, though. Yes, it is. I will say this. The Discord is very overwhelming. A lot of folks talking about a lot of different things at a very high level. They will go super into the weeds on stuff. A lot of very knowledgeable folks. I think if you're new, I wouldn't say it's a great kind of newbie spot to go, because they'll just go down these rabbit holes and talking about, and it can just go too much. But certainly they post great links to things, and it's a great repository of all kinds of different people with all kinds of different experience levels, playing all kinds of different games in the OSR and OSR adjacent space. But given Discord and the way it's a very fluid chat, it can be very easy to get lost. But I recommend, if you're on Discord, it's a good place to check out, especially if you want to get into some deeper discussions with like-minded folks on RPG stuff. Okay, so this article is titled, I believe I don't know if their name is King Bim on the OSR Discord, but I believe that the person who posted it there is the author. But I'm not sure what they go by on that Discord. But here they're calling themselves King Bim from a couple days ago. Maps from my games, lessons I've learned. This is a look at overland campaign maps from my games, not tactical ones. I'll note a few world building / prep lessons I've learned along the way. World building is highly connected to map making. You can do one without the other, but I've never made a map without building the world with it. So he's going to go through, and we're going to go through some of his maps, and he's going to talk through a bit about it. And again, like he just said, some lessons learned. Kaerun, hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Kaerun was the second RPG I ever ran. I spent ages on this map. I'm prepping the game every week. There are cults and lairs and dark, dangerous forests. It has theocracies, elected monarchies, tribal peoples, all of which are shown differently on the banners. The banners even tell you if the lord who resides there is a duke or king or duke or count or mayor. It also tells you which duchy it's in. I'm actually really proud of the density of political information on display in the banners. I don't know if we can click to a bigger... So we can't get to a bigger version, so we can't see more than just the hinting of all the detail that's in on this map. But as you can, I feel like this overview, even though we're sort of zoomed out, right, does give us, you can see there's a lot going on. And you can see the banners all around the sides telling us even more information. And of course, there's just tons of locations on the map. Nice variety of terrain. Seems very kind of England inspired, but we have large forests, we have some mountains, they got a volcano, plenty of plains and grasses, right? But I always had to explain what the banners meant to the players, so it can't have been that good. Their takeaway from this is make player knowledge approximate character knowledge as early as possible. A lot of the time I spent on world building went nowhere, and on places that went unvisited. I don't think it was wasted, but I wouldn't want to do it again. Below is an edit with a red line showing where the players actually went during our year-long campaign. And this, I think, is very illustrative, just in general. You've built this huge map, you've populated, you've come up with all this stuff, and then at the end of the day, when you look at it, how much do they actually get to? And you can see here, and presumably, maybe we look at this as kind of the guiding path, maybe they sort of wandered. You could make these thicker to maybe show some of the terrain they wandered through, but you can see they visited very little of overall of this whole map, right? So you got all this stuff on this one, I guess we'll call it the eastern coast. Really, both coasts. I think they only make it to maybe one place on the western coast, really. Or maybe, I'll call it two places on the western coast. Nowhere on the eastern coast. And then nowhere, let me see, I'm going to scroll back up. Where's that one town? And really nowhere in the south at all. So they spend most of their time basically in the northwest, and not even the most north. Well, I guess they do pretty much go up to the most north. Basically the northwest quadrant of that map. Nothing else. None of those, all those factions, none of those duchies, those duchies, those kingdoms. So many places that they just never got to. He says, and then they add, there was a lot of there and back again, right? And so their lesson from this is also, don't spend too much effort on distant places. So you put all this stuff up, and it never comes up. Now, it's not to say that if he didn't, I don't know if it's a man or a woman, so I'm just going to say they. we don't know if they had decided to make this their main campaign home for multiple campaigns, their setting, if you will. That they could have plunked places, people over on this side. The next party's going to start down in the southeast since they were in the southwest, right? Of course, you could potentially find uses for it, but I think the point would still remain. They could have saved that southeast quadrant prep for the next campaign, and as I'm sure we all do in our journeys, we're informed by what happened. So probably the stuff that you might want to do in the southeast is maybe not even the same as their original idea would have been. So you don't even necessarily get to reuse that stuff, because you might be wanting, now you want to tweak it. Now you've got better ideas, stuff you thought was great before. You realize, maybe that's a little bit silly. I'll do something else. So who even knows how much of that stuff you would just be able to lock in and keep. I'll see. Linkian says, just keep playing different campaigns on the same map, then nothing is wasted. I've played on the same map for 20 years. Absolutely. Oh, that's nothing. Sorry. Not Linkian. Nothing. Hey, nothing. Yes, this is true. But I think even by those standards, you could space out the work. What people often find overwhelming is this fact that they're starting out with this blank map and trying to fill it all in. And I think the lesson here, which is a good one, is you don't need to fill it in all at once. And then you could spread that work out, which then might lead to you not be overwhelming. Some people might just go with it. And I've said this before, but world building, you world build because you love to world build, knowing that your players are going to miss the vast majority of it one way or another. But if you feel like I have this island, this continent, this world, and I must fill it out, you probably don't need to, because your players aren't going to get to all of it, or even they're probably not going to get through more than a small portion of it. So maybe save the work, right? Okay, you're going to put that work in, but you didn't have to do it all up front. You could have spaced it out better. Linkian says responding to nothing. Yeah, that's what I've done. Very basic detail in some nations initially, and now I've run 3 games in very different regions of the continent. Yeah, and I think we're all on the same page, right? It's not that it's useless to have done that, but you could have just done some basic stuff. So if they have a traveler comes from the southeast and they say, what's down there? You have something to tell them, but you didn't need everything out here that they've had until they actually get there. And Lincoln also said, map still has so much blank space that's ripe for development, either if I need a new area or players want to flesh out some sort of backstory there. Yep. And that's another important aspect. Leave open your blank spaces so that you have those places to fill out. I've had conversations with GM that create these maps that are so locked down and so overdeveloped that they have no space for anything. And either they're trying to, or their players are trying to fit something in, and they literally can't do it. Because nothing can go anywhere. There's no space. Leave yourself some of those open spaces. Let's see. Isn't that Jackal says? Isn't that how in the Shadow of Tower Silverax was published? World building that wasn't implemented. I think actually that there was. I believe Jacob can correct me, or you can go back and listen to the stream. That in Jacob's case, he had an area, a map that was not developed. He wrote all that story in this area for the module. And that the reality was on his map, it was just kind of drawn in, but had nothing there. It wasn't that he had a huge backstory for the place and then decided to just use it. It was, I have this empty area on my map. Let me use it. Right. And, like I mentioned about the builders and those stuff, those didn't exist before the adventure. I asked them about that part directly. But I believe the gist of it was that it was an empty area of his map that he filled in for his module. Elfbait says, I used to overbuild big time. I tend to build smaller now, but building big does really make improv easier because you already know what's up in your world. Yes, I do agree. I think there's levels, right? And of course, as GMs, we all have our own strengths, weaknesses, whatever. Some folks are going to be good just putting in all that work, enjoying it. It's like other people read a book. Some GMs will world build, and there's no, it's a good thing for them. Other folks not. I think it definitely is good to have places on the map where you have some basic idea of what's going on there, because for improv, someone comes from the South and you know that in the South is the desert region, you can play that up and some things about it. But there comes a point, I guess, of diminishing returns, which you start putting more and more work into stuff that's going to have less and less of a potential payoff. So that same guy from the South, okay, they come from, if you want to give it kind of an Arabian style culture and kingdom, great. Do we need to know about the individual cities and who rules those cities and how they all get together? Probably not, right? At that point, we only need to know that basic part, if the party really becomes interested, then maybe we can think about it. But again, that's how we can space the work out. We don't have to front load it all. Elfbait says, agree on diminishing returns. You can underbuild too, giving yourself and your players looking at a big empty map scratching their head. Yes. And part of, and I agree with that. And I also think that's why you don't give them a big map. I don't give my party a big map. I give my party a very kind of small area that here's that part of the world, So they're never looking at some big giant empty map. They're looking at a small map of a small area that they can wrap their heads around, and I can also prep fairly easily. Okay, so let's keep going with the article. I'm really digging the comments in the chat. Okay, so since they spent so long in Barristan, which is a town, I guess I also made a city map. The two armies were on the same side in a developing civil war. Same side of what? I guess they're talking about this army here and this. That's a cemetery. This army and that. Okay, so that's just to explain. There are armies on either side of the river. I think the map is fine, but it didn't see much use. When the city was about to be besieged, the players got on a fishing boat and sailed far away. Probably the smart move, ultimately, right? This was not what I'd hoped for, but I learned a valuable lesson about game prep. Lesson, don't make a city map when it's not necessary. I certainly agree with this. I find very little use to city maps, even if they were besieging the city. Let's take this city map as an example, which I think is a quite nice city map from a usability standpoint. It looks like we get a sense of, I mean, I don't know what the actual, say, the what neighborhoods or districts, but I think you could take these main roads and really look at those and say, okay, I can imagine areas that are sort of blocked off by these roads as being a neighborhood of a type. So that gives me something. We got the major landmarks in there. We know it's walled. It's got the river that runs through it with looks like one bridge that goes across. Even if I was coming to, okay, the city's besieged, all I really need is just to measure where are the walls, where are the main centers, and vaguely, because once the enemy is, say, inside the walls, you're going to be falling back to, say, the Citadel or something like that. And do the other locations really matter that much other than they're coming over the wall in the northeast, or they're coming through the river, right? Or they've sapped the wall in the southwest. Like all these other little details. Maybe I want to mention the roads, but it's not really going to be important. They're going to be, I imagine in the siege, they're going to be along the walls, potentially, or wherever the threat is greatest. If again, and this is if they stuck around, right, to do all this and didn't just get in a boat and sail far away as their party did. And so I just need to really talk about the walls. I guess that what I'm saying ultimately is you can do this entirely abstract. Having all the roads and all the details of all this stuff, I don't find super helpful. I'm not gonna be forcing them to give me turn by turn directions. They're never gonna see this map because no one's gonna have this kind of map. Maybe whoever runs the city has some map that has some of these details because the city planning office, or I don't know, whatever it would be in the case of a medieval city. I'm not sure if even such maps exist, but they might have gotten folks to map it for their own purposes. But the players are never going to get this kind of map. It doesn't help me out. They're nice to look at, and I can appreciate them artistically, but I don't find them to be super useful. So if I was going to create a kind of map like this, yeah, I would only do it if I really needed it. And even then, I'm not sure what I would really need it for. I could really do something. And again, not to keep going back to Shadow on the Tower of Silveraxe, but that kind of style, which there's that online tool whose name I can't remember that does this kind of style, just giving sort of basic blocks and kind of boundaries and natural features is at that point it's already almost more than I need, but that's definitely enough. Elfbait in the chat. I tend to map cities in terms of defenses and then important quarters/wards. If I have to place a location in a city, I will describe its ward and maybe some, I'm guessing you mean notes and not moats on the street it's on. Yeah, that's fine, right? Break it down into districts. You could block all these out into districts. If where this theater is, art district has a landmark or two, which is the theater. Here's the market district. Central Market is its main landmark. Something about the street, maybe if it's important, if you want to give it that extra character of talking about different streets. In narrative fiction, I think a lot of authors will get into all the street names and all that stuff, which is fine. But in a gaming sense, I don't feel like it adds that much to the game. Not that having those details isn't fun. Oh, you're on, I don't know, deepening way and this that. Okay, that's fun, kind of the first time, but the party is not interested in the story of why the deepening way is called the deepening way. At some point, they're just going to want to know if they're either where they're staying on the deepening way or something else about the deepening way. It's they're going to focus on what's practical to them. So unless the fact that knowing the deepening way is going to come up in a way that their characters aren't going to know unless they know the name or something, right? It just, after a while, it's just as nice of a detail it is. I don't think glossing over it really loses much, and it saves you a lot of work of having to come up with all that stuff. Jackal says, you could at least describe what the city looks like as the party approaches. The rest you can make up as needed and take notes. Your improv becomes the new canon. Yep. I mean, that's kind of my philosophy with most things. Have this idea in your brain of what it looks like and certainly get your inspiration. You have some idea of what the city is, right? In this case, we've got it. It's got this, the river. It's a walled city with multiple towers, so on and so forth. Again, you could use, if you wanted to use that, the concept of the different quarters and flavors of the different quarters. And then you build it up. And if you come up with stuff that you either give it a name in the moment or some other detail that you need to write down, then write it down. Nothing says, I've never really mapped cities, but I'm running a city campaign now and I map the city and it's helping. Great. I mean, obviously, of course, with everything I say, right? Grain of salt. If whatever it is that wasn't work for me, works for you. Don't nothing. Don't burn your map because I said I don't use them. Keep it. I just find that I don't tend to use them very much. But I could see I've never run a full on like urban campaign and that the whole thing takes place in the city. So maybe in that case, I would find more usefulness out of it. I actually think that some kind of hex map of an urban hex map would work, and I've had that percolating in my brain, but I don't know that I have my kind of fully fleshed out thoughts on how I would do that, but I feel like there's something there which kind of brings together the idea of wards and neighborhoods, a way of abstracting things out to make it easier, but giving maybe some extra details. So I might continue working on that, but yeah, certainly use what works for you. And then Elfbait says, censored descriptions will go much farther than maps. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so going back to the article, they say, I think the map is fine, but I think I already got that, right? Their valuable lesson was don't make a city map when it's not necessary. Now they move on to another map, and this one is a true hex map called the Shattered Isle. This was an archipelago sailing themed game. I had learned my lessons and didn't spend ages on deep lore. I placed some adventures I read on the map and decided some other simple things like there's a Medusa on this island or this one has loads of dinosaurs on it. The effort level was exactly as it should have been. Here we see this really big stretch of islands. And we can see there's kind of, I'm guessing the colors as far as the ocean colors are, I would imagine, right, the depth of the water. So we have the darkest blue, which actually doesn't show up in very many spots, being the darkest water. Then I guess sort of the middle depths and then shallows. In this version, they say this is the blank version. I had another version with everything labeled for me. The player version is lost to the mists of time. It's too big. Players visited hardly any of it, but at least this time, lots of energy and effort wasn't wasted. It was unclear where the focus was meant to be. And their lesson here is don't make your maps too big. Right? And this is, it's kind of similar to the other one, right? So here he reduced the amount of prep he was doing to something much more manageable, but still ended up with something that's too big. But this time the problem wasn't it was too big, so it led to too much prep, because they kept their prep in line with what was reasonable for them, right? Relatively speaking. But that in this case, you have this big space and you plunk the party in there. And yeah, it is kind of hard to see. The only thing that draws the eye is maybe that's where the Medusa is, the hex shaped ring, right? So you have the hex shape of the shallows, and inside the hex shape of mountains, and inside another, that may be the only one that, other than that, it does look like, where do we go from here, right? If he'd made a smaller map, it would have been easier to kind of hone that focus. So yeah, I would agree. No reason to start huge. I always think about it as the players don't have They don't have knowledge of the whole world. Who knows the whole world? I mean, it was a long time in our world, and there's still many people who don't know where things are, right? Ask somebody where, point to a country that's nowhere near them on a map. They might have a hard time, especially if they can't read the names or look it up, right? Or ask their AI driven device, hey, where is this place, right? So it's even something that, even with all the education, everything we have, we don't know. I think in fantasy type games that take place in a relatively sort of low magic, low education kind of medieval area, folks just don't know much about them. And the maps that's showing all these places, there's few of them. They're kept by the highest levels of power. These are things that, these maps that might show a whole continent, to the extent that they exist at all, are going to be held by high priests or kings or wizards and folks who aren't going to share it. They're not posted in the public square for people to ooh and ah over. People are going to know what's a day or half day's travel, right? If you think about it, most people, they're going to live, work, and die going from their farms or wherever they happen to do to the town center, if they're not at the town center already, and then maybe to a market town. If they don't live in the market town, that's probably about a day's travel or half a day's travel away, maybe a little bit less, because you have to get there and get back. And most times you want to be able to get there and get back in one day. So you're talking maybe a little bit less than a half day's travel there, or maybe a quarter day's travel and a quarter day's back, because then you spend half the day there. Right? How your settlements are spaced out, folks aren't going to know a whole lot, and they're not particularly curious about it either. Universities and things, yeah, sure, there are folks who are interested maybe in it more, but then it's almost part of the power structure. Is what is power? Part of it is information. So that there's no reason to have them have some massive map of the whole world, right? And so I really play into that, and it is a lot easier to manage from my standpoint, and it's a lot easier to manage for the players. If there's one or two things of interest on their map, they're going to go, ooh, what is that? If there's 100 of them, then suddenly it's that analysis paralysis. How do you differentiate between all these different things? There's one tower, one dungeon, and a temple. You have basically 3 different kinds of things, and depending on which one piques their fancy, there's one of them. Oh, I've always wanted to check out ruins. That interests me. Or, ooh, dungeons interest me. Or, ooh, towers interest me. But suddenly there's 50 towers and 80 dungeons and 100 temples. Oh, how do I know which one to pick? If I like temples, but there's a million of them. So how do I decide which one to get? It's hard to do that. So you can avoid it. You can avoid it. Sometimes I think, giving the players less choices in that way, I think maybe GMs get caught up in wanting to give everything to the players. I'm playing a sandbox, so I got to have everything. Start small. Give them a few choices. Doesn't need to be, I'm not suggesting you railroad them towards one thing, but sometimes that's not bad either. Some parties like to be kind of led to one thing. So, depending on how your party is, right, and your table agreements, table style, but you give them a small selection, and small map kind of helps everybody, including you, focus in on those things. So you don't want to spend your energy out too thinly, and the players have an easier time picking out from. It's like a restaurant. A restaurant has a million things on their menu. It's hard to figure out what they might be good at, and it's kind of like, I don't know, they got everything under the sun, so what exactly do they do well? And the answer is probably not anything, which is why I much prefer a restaurant that has a small menu of stuff that, ooh, these things are going to be good. I feel the same way with kind of game content. Have a few things that you've really put in some work into, are going to do well, than trying to flesh out 1,000 things that you're just not going to be able to flesh them all out well. And it'll just be a roll of the dice as to which one you get to that's either well done or kind of not well done. All right, back to the article. Dragon Isle. At the same time I was running a game on the fabled Isle of Dragons. I'd learned my lessons, though. PCs mostly came from distant lands, so the character knowledge matched game knowledge. I'd read some adventures/dungeons and crafted them together onto a map, without spending too much effort on the specifics of different places. The lore came out when relevant, aided by a festival in which there was a storytelling competition. I had obvious allies, obvious threats, and dubious groups who could go either way. And we see here it's a nice map. Some main regions were definitely getting some different biomes, some different terrains. So we've got sort of forested hills and mountains and swamps, and looks like some kind of marshes and swamps and some sort of deadlands, ruined wastelands. I didn't even. I said deadlands, looking at the gray trees. I guess are kind of wastelands. I didn't even read that he has an area, or they have an area literally marked deadlands on the map. I think the only thing we don't see is desert, but it might be there, and I'm just not seeing it. And we got forests, and we got kind of tundra and ice. So there's a lot of different stuff in there, right? Kind of a nice mix of things. My biggest criticism of the map is the island is very rectangular. Yes, it does feel like, because, and it looks like hexographer, that because the window, it's like a monitor window, it gives you a rectangular area that you start to fill it up, and then you end up with a map that's rectangular. I really struggle to find anything wrong about the way I set the game up. I think the only real problem was that I had 3 campaign ending threats on the board. It should have been 1 or 2. I remember the players resolving to travel to a location I didn't really want them to go to, which was my fault, as I had NPCs presented as an option to be dismissed. They were halfway stuck between being heroes and being adventurers. Yeah, so there's no real... So, right, so in this map, they feel like they did a good job, other than the fact that maybe it's too square, too rectangular. And they could have done that just by cutting, just giving the ocean some more space up here and just kind of cutting it up. So that would have been easy to fix if they really wanted to. The problem here was really nothing to do with the map at all, but it was maybe putting a few different big bads on there instead of maybe concentrating on 1 or 2. And then something that you always have to be worried about, if you're going to have, you never present an option that you don't want your party to take. Don't tell them, well, there's always traveling to Mount Doom, but I wouldn't do it, because even no matter how much your NPC may exhort them not to do it, there's always that chance, or regardless of what it is, they're going to go, you know what? That guy's full of crap, and I think he's against them. We really should go to Mount Doom. Or, ooh, Mount Doom sounds cool. Or, ooh, I'm ready to go. Chance of death, 100%, I'm in. So you have to be very careful. I always just think, if I don't want my players to go there, see it, do it, touch it, attack it, don't bring it up. Because if you bring it up, you're literally putting that bug in their ear to go there. And at that point, you're hoping you're going to say it like they were saying. I'm going to say it, and they're going to dismiss it, and we're going to say great, and it's just a bit of fluff, some flavor. And it turns out, nope, they're in on it. They're on it. So, be careful with that, or just don't do it. Just beware. Be open to, if you mention it, they may go. That should be like that voice in Field of Dreams. Should tell you that, if you mention it, they may go. The lesson there: focus the intent of the player characters precisely. And then they had this mini campaign. And one other thing I want to notice is, you notice that the complexity of these maps. I mean, the 2 hex maps are basically very similar. The complexity of these are going down and down, so you want to see them getting more naive and sort of childlike, but still presenting essentially the information that they need, which is kind of great. Elfbase says, yeah, if you put on the map, be ready for them to go there. Yep, and that goes for putting on the map, having it being mentioned, putting it in a paper or some other prop, putting a note to it in a dungeon. If you drop it on the table in the game, be ready for them to pick up and say, I want to go check it out. I want to find it. So use it to your advantage, but don't be flippant about it, because the one time you mean for them to ignore it or not use it is the exact time that they will choose to drop whatever else they're doing to chase after it. So this one was from a mini campaign. They called it Tharby Island. This game was meant to run for about 3 sessions for 2 players and ended up running for about 6 sessions. It was a character funnel using quote-unquote level 0, unquote, 5th edition characters. The premise was that an evil cleric had landed on this backwater island and summoned a shadow, which can drain the strength of its targets to make new shadows. Now here we have a very simple island. I think the big black outline that we see is just to give an outline. I don't think it's actually meaningful. We just have the barest thing. We have a couple different terrains: hills, farms, forest, moors, and then the road, all marked out, and 5 areas marking out some locations: an abandoned wizard's tower, 3 villages, and a lighthouse. The island is meant to be about 20 miles from top to bottom, so a bit more than a day's walk given the terrain. This was the exact correct amount of detail, and it had laser-focused characters with a clear intent to survive. The map didn't take too long, and it did its job. The lesson here is more of a what went right lesson than learning from your mistakes. So the lesson they put here is maps are tools, focus on making them usable. And I totally agree with that. And that's something that I really appreciated about Jacob's maps in the Shadow of Tower Silveraxe, is they were pretty to look at, but they were more than that. They were useful. And, given that, yeah, we all love pretty maps. I think we all think, oh, I'd like to publish it, which is, hey, publish it, send it to me. I'd love to take a look at it. But the reality is these games are really these maps are first and foremost for our use in the game. And you can see for something like this, it doesn't take a lot to get the kind of usefulness you need. It doesn't take much. And this you could do in a few minutes as opposed to spending an hour in something else to do this, or multiple hours in other tools, or days if you wanted to really draw it out. And at the end of the day, what difference does it make? It's all about your use at the table. And if this works for you at the table and you can put your prep aside for this and get on to other things that are ultimately more important, do it. And here we get to I think this is the final map. Yep. Which, look at that. This is like, I think my this is right out of my 7-year-old's, her drawing book, other than the typed text, obviously. March of Kite. This is my ongoing old school essentials game. The locations are all either plucked from modules and adventures, or they're reskins of places I designed previously. The player characters are adventurers seeking to maximize their treasure and have been employed by the local baronet, Sir Jack of Kite, to help him rid his lands of various problems. From Kite to Brighton, and I'm looking for here on the map. So where's Kite? Okay, so Kite to Brighton is about a full day's walk with rest, etc. So I guess, so maybe if we were to extrapolate from that maybe a full day's walk and then another full day's walk to kind of the edge on one side, full day's walk to basically the edge on the other side of sort of the known described land. So you essentially have 3 days walk east to west. Could maybe call it 2.5 days walk north to south, not including the fact that the south is dominated by the Red Hills. So, it might slow you down. In that sense, they go on to say, this is the ugliest map of the lot by far. It is the most functional map of the lot. Player knowledge equaled character knowledge very quickly because Sir Jack took the players up the nearby hill and pointed out the major locations of the valley to them. There is no wasted prep here. This is all probably a function of having a full-time job, a baby, learning where to focus my efforts. I probably put too many adventures down on the map. There's six or so adventures / dungeons / modules at play here, which leads me to a lesson that I still don't seem to have learned. However, the lesson is, however long you estimate how long it will take for players to make their way through any content, double the estimation. All right, and so then they put all their lessons in one spot. But I think it's really illustrative. Obviously, where you put that, draw that line in the sand of this is enough prep for me, or this is much. It's obvious, how much work I want to put in. It's going to be very personal, right? It's going to be very personal. Some people are going to find that one of those, maybe even the most complicated map at the beginning, it's well within their power, means, desire, everything to do, and that's fine. At the same time, I do see a lot folks who will aspire maybe too hard for this kind of first style map, the Carahune map. And because they think this is what they have to have. This is what they need. I'm not a real GM. This is not a real campaign. This is not a real game if I don't have some beautiful, map with a compass rose and tons of locations and the names and of all the nobility and all these different areas, all of that listed down. But the reality is that you can totally get by with the map of Kite or the map from Tharby Island, and definitely with the Dragon Isle or the Shattered Isle maps, those hex maps. And that I think is something important to keep in mind when you may feel like you're going as a GM, you're going underwater from all the stuff you need to do. Just do that. It's what do they call it in something? When I was working at the job I was at before this, I administer and kind of work on websites and things like that. And they would talk about the sort of minimum viable product. What's the least we can do and still launch to get what we, the kind of user experience that we're looking for. And the minimum viable product for your GMing is something like this March of Kite. And of course, if you need more, very easy to overlap, find your dimensions and drop some hexes on top of it. If you want to put it out as a true hex map, you can do that, but all going to be up to you. But you really can do with something like this, where I feel like too often, and let's face it, people love to post on Reddit, and they're beautiful. Or Reddit or Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, right? These beautiful maps. And of course, they're amazing, and I'm jealous of all of them. But we don't need to fall in the trap that that's what we need for our game, right? Nothing. Let's see. If we send you something, how do you want us to send it? You can DM me on Twitter. Might be the easiest way to figure it out. It could be something. If it's something on a Dropbox or something like that, you can chat about it, and you can drop me a link to the Dropbox. There's lots of different ways, and I will throw my caption that's conveniently has my Twitter info on there. I don't, unfortunately, YouTube. I mean, I'm on Facebook also. My page, Hexpress. You can search for Hexpress on Facebook, and these also stream on Facebook. I don't usually promote it because the streams they expire, so I put them on there. And if you're someone who prefers Facebook to YouTube, you can hang out with me on the Facebook version. You get all the same stuff, but they expire. So for longevity purposes, I like to the YouTube stuff's going to stick around, assuming Google doesn't destroy me for some reason, decide to wipe me off the face of the planet. They will be there. But they don't have a DM function that I'm aware of. But Twitter's good, or you find me on Reddit. I have a subreddit myself, which is Hexpress, or wherever you can find me. But maybe Twitter's probably the easiest, and we can talk about it. But yeah, I'd love to see stuff. So that was wow. I spent like 43. I didn't think I would take this long on the article, but I think it's a good article. Now I'm ready. I'm ready for OSR Reddit. And maybe I'll go a little bit longer today because I sold people on this as we're going to talk about OSR Reddit, and I spent more than half the hour talking about a different article. All right, I'm going to stick on hot today. Let's see what's hot. Got one. Let's see. At the top, we have one of my PCs is an herbalist. What tables, resources, etc. can I use to make hex crawling more fun for them? I don't have an answer for that. We got some comments here. I kind of like to see what people post more than I have an answer. I'm always for tables and things. Okay, so Sonic, I'm not going to say their name, so I don't get, because I've said that this is not an explicit show. One of the cool things about herbalism is it's a thing people do in real life, so there are a lot of non-RPG resources waiting to be adapted. That's true, though. Doing all that work it's a lot of work, and if someone's got some, and it looks like there's something kickstarted on Exalted Funeral or by Exalted Funeral that looks like it might be useful. Someone's using botanical curse and poisons. That goes to Twitter. Oh, and there is an herbalist primer. It's got a lovely new book, Botanical Curses and Poisons, Lives of Plants by Fez Inkwright. Looks beautiful. Well, mark that down. Botanical Curses and Poisons. Beautifimous. All right, but that doesn't really help us right now. All right, so I'm going to herbalist primer, worm skin. Okay. Oh, there's what's this? A generator. From the D4 Caltrops blog. This is a Google Plus doc that they kept. Oh, I like this. An urban plant generator. Nice. I'll link to this in the planks. It looks cool. And we'll go on to something that I might have more input on. Herb and plant generator. All right, there's that. Pretty cool. Oh, I should probably add that. I use these collections. Yeah, throw that in my tabletop drawer. All right. Let's get on to something. First Princer Menser B/E is the dark horse of basic D&D versions. I'm not sure what the first printing is. I don't have a great. Maybe you can go in and check it out. Okay. So this looks like it's a long. Well, let's see what they say. So they're saying that there's the first printing of the Menser BE part of BECME is not often mentioned. So we'll go ahead and read it. I'll give them an upvote. This is by Catharsis Cat. So I sometimes see people discuss the basic expert versus the BECME/rules compendium, but oftentimes people don't realize there are 3 different versions of BECME rules compendium. The first printing of the Menser expert set was written before the other box sets and didn't take levels 15 plus into account on its tables. I'll have to check mine. So I don't know if I got mine as part of the BECME set or separately. So that's interesting. After the other box sets came out, they actually revised the tables for a smoother progression. For details, this link explains it pretty well. I won't get into that link right now. When the RC came out, it was sort of a mishmash of the 2 expert sets, creating essentially yet another version of the expert levels. Also worth noting is that it is the first print that is on D&D Classics, so that's the one you get if you get the official PDF. Too bad they sell the Menser Basic Player and GM books separately, though. But on to the main point. I think that if you're primarily interested in playing levels 1 to 14 only, I think the first print Menser Expert, along with its corresponding basic set. I think that if you were... I think they mean maybe it's good or that they prefer it. For those who like more competent thieves whose skills max out at 14, it does that just like BX does. But also the cleric spell progression tables are smoother. No huge jump where you all of a sudden get 3rd and 4th level spells at level 6 and then 5th level spells at level 7. They can also get 6th level spells. Saving throws are slightly worse overall, but also more balanced with clerics no longer having way better saves and thieves actually getting a boost to most saves. Even if you'd rather use a version/retro clones game as your rule set, the tables may be worth pulling from this version. Of course, the presentation may be a little bit more debatable. I know a lot of people like the more concise presentation of BX, but I feel like the added text, especially in the expert set, is actually helpful. There are more GM tips with its procedures section, and it does flesh out the default setting presented just a little bit more. It's also cool how the Companion Master and Gazetteer rules were made with compatibility in mind, so even if you don't care about higher levels, you can still pick out rules from them to use with BE if you want. Obviously, I don't think that everyone should just switch over to this version. I definitely don't expect them to. I just think it's a solid yet kind of hidden option for whenever someone is trying to decide on which D&D basic rules to use. Personally, I'm interested in all 30 levels, but if I was sticking to only the first 14, I'd use BE first print. That's cool. I didn't know that. Something to look for. I have no experience with it, so I have nothing to add, but it is interesting that there is this other set, and I'll have to check my box. Maybe I'll pull out my expert box set this afternoon and see if it's at first printing or not. I have a feeling it's not. But the truth will out. Well, that's the thing idea. So if you need one, it looks like the PDF you get on a drive-through/classics is that first printing. You can kind of check it out at low cost. I imagine. They don't seem to be very expensive. All right, here's one that may be more apart. I like torches. Please tell me your ideas about how much they weigh, how long they last, how much light they cast, how many a PC can carry. This is kind of related to what we did last week. We had that article kind of rethinking about light. This was submitted by Restore Privacy. Okay. Blah, blah. I really am not big on comprehensive resource and encumbrance management / too much bookkeeping. I simply require my players to get a home base or horses if they start overloading themselves with stuff in general. Torches, however, are an exception, with only some PCs having dark vision and that being very limited in scope / power in my rules. I really like just keeping track of how many torches / torch out they have. It adds a big element of creepiness, time constraint, resource management, and more to the game. What are the best rules you have made or read concerning this stuff? For instance, 1, how in terms of volume and weight can a PC reasonably carry on top of their regular gear? 2, just spitballing, but how does strength affect number 1? Can a PC up to strength 10 just carry the same amount of torches and each strength point 2 extra torches before the volume becomes too awkward? They just made this up, just trying to have a simple rule rather than weight being an issue. How long does each torch burn and cast light for? 2 hours, 6, or 4? How about 1? Isn't that? I think that's my default for casting light. The character is in pitch darkness and holds a torch up. How far will that light still be useful? Will he absolutely not be able to see anything past a 5-meter radius or 20 meters? Or, where does darkness become absolute again? How many lumen or lux is a torch? All right. So there's a lot to I wouldn't say a lot to unpack, but I go with the simple rules, right? Torches, I think I go like 30 feet essentially, and then after that, some dim light, and then after that, nothing. Some people do, there's actually a lot smaller. Some people may even do like just 10 or 15 feet of good light and out to 30 dim light, and after that, nothing. So yeah, pick whichever one that works. I feel like the second one, I feel like are there different standards for how long torches last? It's always been, to me, it's been an hour. So, your six turns of exploration, and then your torch sputters out. So I just hold with that, and I don't bother with how many lumen or lux is a torch. I don't care. I don't know enough even about those, what they're measuring or how those measurements work, to worry about it. It's just really about how much light is effective. And even then, I don't usually worry about the dim light versus not dim. I mean, maybe if there's something hiding in there and it becomes a factor that's affecting, ability, in the sense that there's something there, I might highlight it, how in the dim light, maybe you have better hiding or something's better hiding against you. But for the most part, it's more a flavor thing about, good light or dim light than nothing. I try not to get too much into the weeds on it, and I don't find that it comes up very much to be important. As for how much you can carry, I generally just go by the default rules, coin weight or whatever. I know that does a lot of folks want to separate weight from bulkiness. I don't find that I care ultimately, really. Is it worth making those distinctions? I guess is my question. What is it adding to the game if I want to separate out or track separately the amount of bulk of something versus their weight? I just want players to be aware of what their characters are carrying. To me, it adds to the feeling of the game. This concept of, I can't carry everything under the sun. I have to make choices. I have to, when I run into what I gear up for leaving the village, how that's going to impact me when I'm finding stuff in dungeons or in the overworld, wherever, how in the wilderness, how's that going to impact me? And then I have to make choices, and those choices are meaningful and have consequences. Other than that, I don't need to get down in the weeds on it. It is really not that, those details for me aren't super important. And I definitely find that, granted, you can end up in situations where you want to think like, oh man, that's so bulky, but I'm usually willing to let it slide for the most part. Elfbait says, situations of bulk are often less common than weight. If my players tell me they want to carry the huge magic mirror out of the dungeon, we can figure that out when it happens. Right. And at that point, I'm not going to worry about, oh, well, this thing is bulky, but you already have bulky items, so, it's double bulky. What does that mean? It doesn't matter. They can figure out how to manage the weight of it. And, of course, there is fictional positioning. You're carrying out a magic mirror or even just a valuable mirror, and it's 10 feet long and 4 feet wide, then, yeah, we got to figure that out. I'm not just going to, okay, you carry it because you can handle the weight, like no problems. Like, no, we're going to have to deal with the logistics of how you're doing it. I'm not suggesting it's ignored completely. I just don't need a rule for it. That's, for me, the rulings part, because it's going to come up rarely. How many of those same dimensions are they going to carry? Okay, it's a foot, or, it's whatever, 3 inches thick, 8 feet tall, 4 feet wide. If I make a ruling for that, it's probably not going to come up again ever, right? Or it's going to be different. Okay, now we want to carry this queen-sized bed out of the dungeon. Okay, well, that's going to have a whole bunch of other considerations because its measurements are much different. So then I got to come up with the ruling anyway. So yeah, it's those kind of details. That to me is that kind of devil in the details that I try to avoid, which is you start getting in there, if you really don't need it, it's really not important. Is it just something that's going to be a stumbling block for you? Or is it additive? I don't find it additive. Plus, they're going to be constantly going through torches. So that bulkiness is going to be a rotating issue. Let's read a couple of the responses here. And I'll upvote. Actually, Anara says, for carrying light, a lantern makes infinitely more sense. Even without using a lantern, candles are more effective than torches for exploring dungeons and even finding your way on a road or path. You absolutely need the brightness of a torch for a procession or to scare off wild animals, perhaps. The burlap soaked in wax with a handguard to catch wax is the easiest. The wax and cloth can be replaced or trimmed as necessary. It's a little silly to think that you would carry full size instead of replacement fuel. In ancient Rome, torches would be made with sulfur and lime, so they would not douse when wet, even if submerged. Another benefit of a torch over a candle is the heat output, which may be useful. That's great stuff there. I didn't really know about Roman torches. That might be an interesting twist to come in if they end up somewhere that's got that sort of thing. That's interesting. I like the idea of this. I generally think of torches in kind of the Hollywood sense that there's some kind of fabric or material, but then I do have it kind of burn the wood as well. Maybe I should rethink that. You can have essentially a reusable stick, and now you just add more wax-soaked burlap and kind of wrap it around and attached somehow. And then maybe the stick, I would imagine the stick does get damaged eventually, but you could then say, we only have a few sticks. We're carrying around a bunch of this wax-soaked burlap, which then might have its own issues, right? What happens if something you are ignited and you've got some part of your pack is filled with burlap soaked in wax, which is highly flammable and doesn't, or you're carrying around a bunch of sulfur and lime mixture that will not even douse when wet. Could be some good stuff. Good stuff there. His other answers, do you want strong characters to be able to carry more light? I wouldn't worry about this personally. I agree with that. Torches burn somewhere between 20 minutes and an hour. I would just go with an hour. That's where, you could make this a roll. And I think that on some of the sort of overloaded dungeon die, or I forget if that's what it's called exactly, or when people roll a dungeon die, they oftentimes torches going out is one of the things that can come up, but I find it worth it. I would rather my characters know how many torches rather than, your torch goes out and then you roll badly. Your torch goes out again. That kind of thing. Elfbait says one tiny little low-level fire spell could be a disaster. Yes. Yes, indeed it could. I mean, I do think that is a nice thing, right? I actually like that. When low-level spells used by the party or against them can be effective, even against people who might be sturdy because of all the stuff they're carrying. All that stuff you're carrying can work against you. Thimenu says, one thing to always keep in mind, torches give off lots of smoke, bad for tight spaces. Better over caves and such would be lanterns, lamps, and candles. Yes. I don't usually talk about this when my party are using torches as opposed to lanterns. I do mention the smoke. I don't really start to think about, well, in a tight space, are they starting to asphyxiate or something like that but I do talk about how the smoke can be a detriment to any kind of stealth. You may be quiet, but the smoke is proceeding ahead of you down the corridor is a bad look. But I don't tend to get into the minutiae of, the space is tight, so you're starting to breathe in smoke, and that's bad. I mean, I could do that. It's not a bad twist or interesting element. I tend to not fixate on that. Red Caps. Hey, Red. Generally pre-roll torch going on ahead of the game if I know the session will be mostly a dungeon dive. I have a timesheet of turns per hour and just mark where torches go out. Yep. Yeah, I don't even bother rolling at all. I just, it's 6 turns, and I just tick down 6 turns. But, there are, I think I would be more inclined to go with the torches going out somewhat randomly if I was using kind of usage dice or some other abstraction for torches. Because I feel like they would kind of work more together, since that's kind of fluid and you're not really tracking it piece by piece. Then them going out could be more fluid. You can say, that must be that was a rotten torch, right? It fell apart when it was only lit for 5 minutes. But I think if they're tracking them torch by torch, I'm fine to give them the whole hour. I don't need to short them the hour or worry about whatever. It's just easier for me to track, is just to be able to go, this round another one goes off, as opposed to rolling more dice. As a GM, I don't feel like I need to roll more dice just to roll them. I don't mind rolling dice, but I have enough things to roll dice for. And the last one I'll read here, I'll give an upvote by Hexed Junkie. Got this name that's right up my alley. When they use coin weight torches, they weigh 10 coins each. When they use pound weight torches, they weigh a pound. And then if they're using slots, then they use 1 slot per 3 torches. And then if they're using a resource die, then they roll them every 6 turns, basically, right? You're each going for the hour. And he's got a lot of different rules. This guy's got his torches down to a science. They're using group encumbrance. Torches form part of the group's light resources and are abstractly tracked as a group above. Nice. And then he says, well, I don't care. I'm probably playing Fate or something. Well, there you go. That's some really good. He had some really good stuff in there. If you need more about torches, he's your man. That's Hex Junkie with an I. Let's see. Red caps. Yeah, they will only ever go out once per hour, but randomize when in that hour, so it could happen at less than ideal time. Oh, I see. Yeah, that's a nice twist. I usually start talking about how they're flickering or how the light's getting less intense or less constant and that kind of thing. Sort of start them thinking about like the light's about to go out. And I encourage them to swap out the torches before the torch actually goes out, because then they have to deal with trying to do it in the dark. Okay, Warlock. Has anyone played it? I'll give them an upvote. I'm interested in Warlock. I have not played it. I'll have to come back to that one after I've played it. Oh, here we go. This should be good. All right, this is something they made. It might take us off the site. We'll see what it is. There are 2 rats in this room. Their take on rats, posted by Uneteronef. Uneteronef? I don't know how to pronounce that. I wrote a trap, a power, and an NPC and a character class, all for your rat-flavored games. All right, let's take a look. Where's this taking us to? Okay, to WordPress. I will post this in the chat. I'm always down for let's make something more interesting. So this is let's make rats rates. That was my typo as I'm typing in the chat. All right. There's the link. So what is his name on the blog? Vagabundork. This is just my own personal thing. If your name on your blog is Vagabundork, why not use that name for your Reddit account as opposed to using a completely different name? I mean, you're a creator. Maybe you'd like people to put together your stuff on Reddit with your stuff here and make it easy by using the same name. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. A note on that last thing. Redcap says, regarding that post on Warlock, the artist that did the cover of Warlock also drew my Redcap logo. Oh, awesome. That's really cool. I need to find someone to maybe do some drawings for me to use, but I'm not really sure what I want yet. So I feel like I'm an artist's nightmare at this point, but I do want to, once I can actually get some, I mean, obviously I need to get some kind of budget that I spend and kind of what I want and all that nonsense, but I do want something. All right. There are 2 rats in this room, ... Let's make rats interesting. Posted today by Vagabundork. And as they said on their Reddit post, it's a trap, a power, an NPC, and a character class for your rat-flavored games using BX stats. Well, hey, look at this. It's right up our alley. All right, so first they have a new trap called the Rat Nest. You will fall into a burrow full of rats, thousands of them. That's a lot of rats. Each round, you suffer 3d4 points of damage, save versus paralyzation for half damage. I'm presuming that's you moving in the mass of rats, right? Which is, it kind of makes sense. They're all over you. Can you find something to get your balance? Whoa, sorry, I didn't mean to scroll down there. Get your balance and move, or are you totally just stuck? Light and fire keep the rats at bay for 1d4 rounds. After that, they get bold and rush you. All right. I feel like this needs a little bit more. So really, it's just kind of a pit trap. I might put the Rat Nest pit. All right, you're falling into a pit. But now that you're at the bottom of the pit, instead of there being spikes or just ground or water with alligators in it, it's full of rats. Let's see. No fun allowed. Hey, no fun allowed. Now you're making all these YouTube pennies. You can put that to art. Yeah. Pennies indeed. Yeah, it is. It's more like fractions of pennies. But Rome wasn't built in a day or destroyed in a day. So, I got to start somewhere. But yeah, I'll start putting those fractions together and getting my art budget. Okay, so here we have a new power called Command Rats. I guess they really could have probably put this as a spell. Oh, they're going to have it as a spell. I'm getting ahead of myself. Depending on the system you use and your preference, Command Rats can be a spell or an innate or acquired ability. The mechanics are less important than the effects. So if we were to put it in our ye old Vancian magic, it's a level 1 spell. Duration, the magic level's user in turns. Otherwise, it's innate, acquired, purchased through an item granted by King Rat or whatever. Duration 1d10 turns or the referee's choice. Uses per day. Charisma modifier minimum 1. I might use character level, right? If you have this as an innate ability, that way it grows with your character and isn't reliant on charisma. I'm very big on not having your stats have much ongoing, your attributes, I should say, having much ongoing impact after your first level, or have almost a diminishing impact. So rather than tie it to an attribute, I would probably tie it to your character level. The effect is you can control a group of 1d6 plus 9 rats to act in unison. The group has HP equal to the number of individuals and will disperse when half its members are lost or when the effect runs out. You can give them an order and they'll carry it out to the best of their ability as long as it's not an order directly harmful to them. That's a key to remember, not directly harmful to them. So you can't have them rush an elephant or something like that. They won't do it. There's a secondary effect when using this power, and for 1d4 days thereafter, cumulatively, you'll be constantly surrounded by friendly rats. They'll climb on your shoulders, run around you, etc., but intense light and fire will keep them away. Sounds very much like I don't know the lady's name from the Suicide Squad. So it's kind of like if you want that, was she the rat catcher? I don't know. There was some name for her, I think. I just don't remember it. So if you wanted someone like that, you can give them this kind of power. For the spell version, I actually might make the duration more like Charm Person, where it can last for a long time, but maybe make some rolls every once in a while to see if the rats go back to being feral. So it has some of that risk reward that, if you've followed me at all, I like so much, right? You can keep them around, you keep using them, but at some point, maybe at a point you don't really want them to, they either turn hostile or they just decide to flee. I would do that, so there could be some fun on kind of an ongoing basis. And they have a new NPC, Rat. They've got leather armor. They're 3 HD, 12 hit points, 2 push daggers. They call them kataras, but I guess they're push daggers. 1d8 damage when attacking with only 1. It's 1d6 damage. So basically, it's when they attack, it's like they're using both of them. They've just abstracted it out to basically 1d8 of damage for both. But you could have given them 2 attacks. All right, so King Rat is about a man of 45, handsome but slovenly, who lives in the catacombs, surrounded by rats who obey him and with whom he can talk, mainly about poetry, philosophy, politics, and science. Whether the rats understand or respond to him is open to debate. An anarchist, he doesn't believe in authority, but believes in fair exchange. He has got that Command Rats ability. He can use it 5 times a day. How did he get it? If questioned and he decides to tell, he will say that it was given to him by God Rat, but will not give further details. King Rat doesn't have any scarification. I'm not sure what they mean by scarification, but sure. Mark of the Rat. An adventurer can fulfill an assignment in exchange for the Mark of the Rat, which allows him to use Command Rats as described above. The mark is a rat-shaped scarification on the left temple. Would we not just say scar there? A scarification, something different than just saying you've got a scar. And you could have just said Mark of the Rat. In fact, I would probably put Mark of the Rat above Command Rats. And that way, in the paragraph on Command Rats, you could simply say King Rat doesn't have the Mark of the Rat, or doesn't have any visible Mark of the Rat. Might be a little bit simpler, but that's cool. So you can find this person. You can do a good, Bob Mostel says, intentional scarring. Okay. I don't think that distinction is necessary here. I mean, does that mean then that you fulfill the assignment that the king rat is going to physically put that scar into you, or is it something that's done by magic as he bestows the ability? I suppose it makes sense, but in that case, rather than using a term like this, just spell it out. You will undergo a ritual that will give you a rat-shaped scar called Mark of the Rat, and you will get imbued, and you will become imbued with the Command Rat's ability, right? Don't need an overly technical word that's just going to throw people like me off. And then finally, we have a new class, the Rat Catcher. Only the man who cleans the public latrines has a worse job than you. But after all, you are not cut out for a glamorous life, nor are you cut out to rub elbows with the nobility or to know carnal love. Wow, not even carnal love. That's cold, man. That's cold. But such trifles don't matter to you, or at least you've managed to convince yourself of that. The alternative is very depressing. So their requirement is a dex of 9. I actually would give it a requirement. Prime requisite is charisma. They have 6 HD. Their max level is 14. They can wear leather armor. They can use any weapon, and they know common and thieves' cant languages. So they have a section here called combat. Poverty, or as you call it, freedom, is your motto. You're not used to wearing armor heavier than leather. If for some reason you wear it, you can't use your knave, track vermin, or rat senses abilities, and you lose 2 or 4 points of dex while wearing it. Chainmail and plate, respectively. Okay. All right, so that's your armor. You have something called a gallows humor, which is you get a +2 bonus to your rolls to resist psychological effects, magical or otherwise, related to fear, sadness, or nihilism. All right. You're a knave, or you have an ability called knave. You know one thief skill of your choice, or randomly for more fun, except find, remove, trap, and pickpocket. You can use it as a thief at the same level. I might do thief as a level -1 or 2, just to keep it. I like that. I like a little bit of niche protection. But if you move, let's see, if you're getting rid of find, remove, trap, and pickpocket, so what's left? Climb, hide in shadows, and is that it? Classically, is there a move silently? I guess you get to one of those 3. I like in general, you get a lesser ability. Well, in this case, I would make it a lesser level of ability, but you kind of get one of those skills. So you're not a full-fledged thief, but there's at least one thiefly skill that you know, and you also know thieves' cant, which could be useful. Here we go. Rat senses 1. You're good at finding your way around sewers, catacombs, dark alleys, and other artificial or semi-artificial structures. If you are the party's cartographer, the referee is obliged to make at least one major correction or any number of minor corrections she wishes. I'm not sure what that means. When you come to a room or hallway that you have already visited, you always know that you have been there before and notice any relevant changes. That last part's good. The middle part, I'm assuming, means that if you make a big error on your map, the GM is obliged to at least correct once. But I don't like that one because there's no... How often are we supposed to do that? Is it once a session? Is it every time we see one? It just adds a lot of bookkeeping. I do like the idea that if you come to a room or hallway you already visited, you know you've been there before, which would help, I think, if you had a mistake in your map, and let's say you made a circle on the map, you came back somewhere you've been before, but your map you didn't know it, that would automatically highlight. It would help kind of reorient you. So I would just stick with that one, and I like the bit about noticing any relevant changes. Maybe I put a note in there that this might expire after time. Like if you leave for 6 months and come back, your rat senses are no longer relevant, right? It's got to be during a week or some period of time, and or you could tie that to your rat catcher level. At level 2, it lasts for 2 weeks, and then if you're level 10, you can come back 10 weeks later, and you'll still have that kind of sense of the place. And then we have a second set of rat senses. When you are in a dilemma between several possible paths, there's a 2 in 6 chance that you'll instinctively know if there's any immediate danger. Again, this probably needs to be fleshed out a little bit more. Are they saying immediate danger down one of those paths? Immediate danger where you're sitting? Immediate danger behind you? I would want to know. I would want to say that you could spend some period of time analyzing each path or sniffing it or something, and there's something kind of within, I would say, 120 feet. So basically one exploration turn's worth of movement down one of those. Do that. But I'd want to put some qualifiers, a little bit more detail in there. And Jackal says your rat senses are tingling. Yes, tickling. They could be tickling you too. Yes, the rat senses are definitely tingling. I keep saying tickling. Why is tickling on my mind? But yes, and either way, your rat senses are going off. Let's see, there's a track vermin ability. You can automatically detect and track vermin, including kobolds, goblins, and the like, referee's choice, and of course, rat folk. When you fight these creatures, you receive a bonus of 1. You don't need a THAC0. Just say you receive a bonus of +1. And why referee's choice? Just make it your choice. You choose one of these creatures. Kobolds, goblins, throw in some other ones. Rat folk you get free. And you can pick one of those, and you get a bonus. Or you could just give them all of them. But it's called track vermin, so I don't know why it is when you fight them. I would take the fighting part out, and just say that you can, and maybe the automatically I would take out too. I would probably redo these, maybe make them, again, give them some kind of progression in the rat catcher levels. At 9th level, you can completely clear and control a major area of the city system, subway tunnels, or alleys, an area that will serve as your territory. You will be the leader of a gang of 2d6 thieves and 3d4 0-level beggars who will follow you and protect the territory and will be happy to pay a small voluntary weekly tribute as long as you don't show yourself to be a despot or start bathing more frequently than them, you fop. So basically your idea of a stronghold, which I think is a really cool idea. Other people are making their strongholds above the city or in the city or making their own cities or strongholds. Your settlement is below ground. I like the idea of that. I'd probably have to look more closely at what fighters and other things get and tie this in. If it's kind of similar language, which it probably is, then your followers kind of work well. I might specifically put in there what I feel like the tribute could be, and maybe tie that into level as well, since this unlocks at 9th level, and you have up to 14th level, so I might have it grow. And then I 9th level, I imagine this is not a it's not a magical occurrence, clearing the sewers for yourself. To me, this is more of a if you can do this, if you can clear out this area, you will attract these folks who will then help you control it and maintain it. So, but it's cool. I like the idea. Okay, we got some starting gear. I'm not going to go through that, but that's a nice way of. I like stuff like that because it gives you a very easy way if you were running a game and you need to get your rat catcher character all set up. Instead of having them pour through manuals to figure out what they get, you can just roll on some tables and get it. And then we have their level progression. Something down here. More rats. All right, I'm not going to go through that one, but that's cool. I think I did put that in the chat. Lovebase says it's like other stronghold options. You still need to clear the area you were granted. Right. Yeah, I just want to make that clear. That's just me. Make it clear. Because the one thing, the way this is put is these are all kind of powers or abilities. So it says like 9th level, or it says, track vermin. You can automatically detect and track vermin. And then at 9th level, you can completely clear and control a major area. Kind of makes it seem like 9th level, rat catcher power activated, and just and the sewers magically clear and they fill with friendly rats and beggars and stuff. So I would just want to make clear that no, at 9th level you have the option to do it. It's not magic. But yeah, I feel like most GMs would kind of get that instinctively. Your home game, if this is your own private notes, sure, but you're sharing on the internet, so I just feel like, hey, sharing it, right? I want to make it clear. Let me make sure they get their upvote. And I'll upvote the Scribo, who says, awesome, love some rat content. Yep, nothing wrong with some rat content. That was good. Okay, we've got the Sepulchre of 7. They're free OSE compatible module. I'm not going to go there, but I'm going to upvote it. What content have I had success before with reskinning for OSR? I'm doing my first kind of reskinning job right now with Keep on the Borderlands, or the Caves of Chaos from Keep on the Borderlands, but my party keeps turning away from the caves, so I can't say I've had success yet since they decided to go back to. They ended up changing their minds, deciding to go back to Civilization. So my reskinning will be waiting for a future date. How do you run Ravenloft or similarly structured campaigns for OSR gaming? I'm not going to go in there, but I would say hard, right? I did a read through. If anyone's curious or interested in Ravenloft, I did a read through, and it was like Halloween a couple years ago or around about. So I don't think I did it exactly on Halloween. And my takeaway from Ravenloft, I guess I'll go in there. Actually, no, let me go back to that. I'm going to go in. My take on Ravenloft was I hadn't read it for a long time. And it's the first module in there. It's extremely linear. It's definitely more linear than I remember, but I think like way back in the day, that kind of linearity, it wasn't something I was really thinking about. So I probably didn't even notice. And I never ran it. So I didn't have direct experience with it. It seems like the gist is you're going to be starting one side of the map and you're just going to kind of go through the map, experience it linearly. And then when you get to the castle, everything basically locks you in. So you really can't get out. And then I think once you finish the castle, I think it just dumps you out. So it's like a roller coaster ride. You start, tick, tick, tick to the top, stuff happens, woo, it spits you out on the other side, you're out. Is that a term? I mean, I know we have things like we talk about narrative dungeons and things. I wonder if that's like a good term. If we have sort of a fun house dungeon, maybe there's another term that could be for dungeons that or adventures that are sort of just a ride, just like a linear ride. And it was definitely a linear ride. I almost think that for and I know there's other Ravenloft modules and things between first edition and present day. I haven't really looked at them much, so I don't know if some of the other modules ditch that very linear approach and give you more open world stuff. I really feel like, just from what I've read, which is really just Ravenloft and Curse of Strahd, I would probably take 5th edition's Curse of Strahd and port it backwards, or maybe not backwards, port it to OSR. Because I was thinking back to BX, but essentially whatever. Use your OSR of choice. I would rather do that, I think, because that gives you a much more open experience. No Fun Allowed says sandbox, railroad, and roller coaster style of fun. Yes, right. Like, I mean, because it is still a railroad. It is a railroad. Maybe that's a better, like a fun railroad might be called a roller coaster. I like it. I'm going to start using it, right? Because it is a railroad, but the idea is that it's something fun and exciting and not just. I mean, I think a GM who runs a railroad also imagines it's fun and exciting. Yes, certainly, that's not a bad way to think about it at all. Yeah, so that's me. He has some specific questions. Well, actually, I'll read his background. So this was posted by Delirium Rostello. There's a lot of dimension hopping essentially inherent in Ravenloft. Each domain's radically different in theme, core antagonist, enemies, even domain effects. Some might impact spells differently from one another. For example, he or they are having a hard time getting their head around this after deciding to run something with this format. And now that their players are interested in exploring other realms, I'm trying to think of a good way to run this. While not every take on Ravenloft will make them be literally in different dimensions, even when they're slammed together in one world/planet, it's still the case that these places are so insanely different from one another as to be a meaningfully different experience than just sailing from one place to another. In Faerun, especially when most Dark Lords can close their borders or have aspects of their personality/curse impact the realm so dramatically. Oh, so I think they're not really talking about Ravenloft, the module. I think they're more talking about that book that came out a while back, which I really liked for how it was trying to expand all these different sort of dark places. So really it's more about if you have these dark domains, I think is what they're called in that book. You have these different dark domains spread around, and your idea is your party might go through them. How do you fit them together? Especially if you don't mean them to be in different dimensions or different planes, as Ravenloft is kind of in a plane. Or even if you do, how do you kind of fit that together and not just make it feel kind of all loopsy doopsy? Just sort of like, too gonzo or just too random, which is a good question. In particular, their questions are, what's traveling between domains like? Would you make it literally just as simple as crossing a border? Or would it be that each domain is different dimension/reality? Kind of like what 5th edition was doing, or something in between. So I'll answer. I'm going to try to give my answers, and I'm definitely interested to what you folks in the chat think. I think traveling between domains can be as simple as crossing a border, or it can be something more serious like dimensional travel, or something different. It could be Ravenloft, you just walk in the mists, you end up in Barovia. Maybe you cross the River Styx and you end up in a Hades kind of underworld type situation. Some of them may be only passable through a spell or a dimension door or or a natural effect that mimics that kind of spell. It could be all kinds of stuff. I don't think it has to be one or the other. It could be a whole different things. Be as interesting and different and weird as you want. Marcel Sepulveda says, yeah, apparently this is the campaign, not I6. Right. Yep. Got the gist of it. Oh, and No Fun Allowed says they left a comment in the thread. All right. Well, I'll check out your comment and I will give it a thumbs up, even if I don't agree with it. No Fun Allowed. You'll get a upvote from me. They love the AD&D Ravenloft content. All right, I'm just gonna refresh this just so that I can be able to see No Fun Alloud's comment. The question is No Fun Allowed called No Fun Allowed in Reddit, or are they called something else? Dum dum dum. All right, so now question number 2: how would you factor setting up keeps /castle /bases into this kind of game? Would they be able to set up a fortress at 9th level in the domain of a Dark Lord? I mean, they might. I would think that maybe they would replace the Dark Lord, and that's how they get there. Remember, 9th level in an OSR game is you're kind of at end game, right? So it may be completely within their power, or maybe it should be, to depose a Dark Lord and set up in their place. Probably, I would say that your average Dark Lord would not be keen with a party setting up their own stronghold in their domain. So it's probably going to be it's you or me, pal. So that would be the question there. Or that would be my answer to that one. Third question: what does it mean to slay a Dark Lord? It's something like 5th edition. You could feasibly just move on, fade to sunset, a la Curse of Strahd. But it seems like that would be a less tangible ending for this kind of gaming. Well, maybe it is that you get that domain. It becomes yours with all the consequences of it. Because in the book, they talk about sort of the reasoning, or not, I don't know, the logic behind them. And it might not all be good to inherit that dimension. That could even play into how you actually defeat the Dark Lord and what kind of the dark forces that have made that Dark Lord what they are, what happens with the party. They could conceivably take it as their own domain. Maybe there could be some sort of bargaining they have to do with some kind of infernal or mysterious or outer world party. Lots of angles. You don't need to have just one. It really depends on where they want to go from there. Is this a campaign ending type of victory where they want to go in the sunset? Or is it something where they know they want to do domain play, so it makes sense, or something in between, right? I don't think you need to prejudge it, but I would definitely want to think about it when they're getting closer to that and get a gist of what your players seem to be wanting. What's the end goal? I mean, it depends on what they're there for. Are they there to do something? Are they just passing through? I mean, the end goal could be a whole bunch of different things. There's not any one answer to that. And if I were to run Ravenloft, how would I do it generally? I would just, again, if we're using the campaign setting as opposed to the module, I would use that as my base. And then depending on how the campaign was, is the campaign completely in Ravenloft? Then I'd want to add probably more stuff to Ravenloft. What else is going on? What other denizens? I would imagine that Strahd has co-opted other powerful creatures, just less powerful than him, and set them up in different parts of Barovia to help control it. Maybe there's sort of a dark feudal type of society with Strahd at the top and then other types of creatures below him that then create dungeons and other places for the party to explore and fight against until they kind of work their way up to Strahd, or Strahd works his way down to them. So that's probably how I would, or are they passing through? What do they need here? How do they get out? I would want to figure out those kinds of things. If they're stuck until they defeat Strahd, or is there something else they can do, or do they have their own ability to get out? I want to figure out those choices. Something along those lines. All right, let's get into what the answers in the thread are, and let's see if we can find No Fun Allowed's answer. First, we've got Custardy. Great name, by the way, Custardy. I think that the original AD&D module, but also many of the existing Ravenloft adventures, are already close to current OSR. Mostly they present complex scenarios over a defined and limited space that are solved by thinking and exploring and clever tactics, with lots of combating as minions that can be avoided or not, and then some big standoff with the Dark Lord themselves that the player puts off as long as possible as they gather their strength. I mean, though you could probably say that about just about any content, right? Complex scenarios over a defined and limited space solved by thinking, exploring, and clever tactics with combat that can be avoided or not, and then a big bad. A standoff with a big bad that you try to hold off until you're prepared. Thus is essentially every module just about ever written. So yes, while that does definitely ring true for these, it also rings true for just about everything else. They mostly know the original AD&D I6 module, and then the box set Castles Forlorn. And each of those Dark Lords is too strong to truly fight unless the players explore the realm and find weapons, information, and backstory. They would likely turn those and other domains of dread into a hex crawl, just for the purposes of defining the travel times and things, and to turn the domain into an explorable and hostile space, with chances to randomly encounter anything from minions and monsters through to the Dark Lords themselves, based on the site/hex that the players are in. I think that's a good approach. Scatter the clues to the mystery of the domain across the hexes, plus treasure, plus the weaknesses of the Dark Lord, the resources needed to understand and defeat them. Let the pieces explore while constantly being spied on and harried by the Dark Lord's forces. You don't appreciate the disruption and threat the adventures pose. Also good stuff. They got some long answers here, which I'm going to gloss over, but hopefully cut to the meat of them. A typical way domains work is DM fiat. As long as you want the players trapped, the mists trap them. And then when you don't, the mists either clear or transport to the next domain. Yeah, it's basically it. I would want to come up with some kind of mechanic. I mean, ultimately, I'm coming up with a mechanic, so the mechanic itself is DM fiat in a sense, but I'd like to, as soon as possible, as soon as I can come up with a feasible way to remove it from that realm and I can pull back into that kind of referee realm, I would want to do that. Elfbait says, morality play is what happens to the denizens of the domain when you destroy the Dark Lords. Some of them might be innocents trapped there. Yep. I mean, you can definitely play with that too, right? I mean, there's the bigger picture of you take out the master of the domain. Does the domain itself just collapse and just dump people into the multiverse? Does it stick around? Does it become attached to you who have deposed the Dark Lord? Do you become a Dark Lord yourself, or can you turn it into a domain of light instead? Or will you succumb to just a different form of darkness? These are the questions, right? But then within that, individual creatures that have been trapped there for some period of time, that can be more adventuring. What happens to them? How do you help them get out? Are they trapped? And now, since you've removed the Dark Lord, maybe they have their own chains. The chains that trap you here are your own. Now that Strahd is gone, Irina. Why hasn't Irina gone back? Maybe it's because something else that she needs to deal with, or you need to help her deal with before she can return. So things like that. Multiple levels, like an onion. Let's see. They would swap the player keeps /castle/bases for something else cool and spooky. You could definitely do that. You can also fit the flavor of your dark domain. They would tend to make the Dark Lords a bit like load-bearing bosses. Once they're killed, either one of the PCs or a major NPC might become the next Dark Lord, if that makes sense. Or the mists close in and the PCs can rush to grab anything not nailed down. Yep. The end goal to discover the story of the domain and the Dark Lord through exploration. Right, same kind of stuff. Right, you're doing adventure-y kind of stuff to work your way up to the Dark Lord. And then Delirium Rostello, loved that response. Has further, they go into a whole long conversation I am not going to read through. We get Irizian _ Neko. Irizian Neko. Here, take an upvote. Irizian Neko. All right, so they played 2nd edition Ravenloft a long time ago and claim it was reasonably fun. So a bold statement there on that game. It was reasonably fun. They would just, let's see, they like what, okay, sorry, they're just repeating. I was trying to read through getting the crux of their answer to question 1, but they were actually just restating question 1. All right, so their answer to the first question about travel, domains would have boundary. And they said from 2nd edition about the difficulty of leaving a domain is proportional how badly you want to leave, which is interesting idea. Interesting, but hard to game. Maybe I'd have to go back and read whatever 2nd edition was doing. Because who's going to say how hard you want to leave, right? And if the players get wind of that, then could they just argue, I don't really want to leave. I'm just backing out. And what do you do as a GM? No, I know your character really wants to leave, therefore it doesn't work, or it's hard. It gets into a weird... I'd want something kind of not based on some sort of RP argument of that nature. Let's see how... Okay, so on the domain building part of it, they say that powers would become interested in anyone doing this and could be the beginning of the player forming their own domain as their attachment increases. That's another interesting angle. Domains within domains, or would their domain kind of pop out like its own bubble at some point? The player would probably be tempted to commit evil acts by the powers and rewarded for it to increase their grip on the player. Other Dark Lords might react unfavorably, but that varies by the lord. So yeah, there's another interesting angle. What does it mean to slay a Dark Lord? They say you might be able to leave the demiplane, or you could become the new Dark Lord. Yep, that seems to be a common answer. What's the end goal? What end goal? There's no way off Mr. Bones' wild ride. Space Goblin. Not very helpful, it just says. Just get the AD&D 2e version and play that. It would be very OSR compliant. All right. That's not really helpful. Let's see. All right, I want to find... Let's see if we can find No Fun Allowed. Where are you? No Fun Allowed. Space Chalk 64. Let's see. Oh, here we go. All right, first of all, having not even read his answer yet, I'm giving it thumbs up. There you go, No Fun Allowed. Don't say I didn't ever do anything for you. I have given you this one upvote. No Fun Allowed. Very concise answers, which I appreciate as I'm starting to lose my voice. First of all, crossing domains is different, always different based on the Dark Lord of the region. Let's see, I have to remember the questions though. Okay, was the question 2 was on domain building? Yes. Okay, so question 2 on domain building is... Depends on the domain. Some Dark Lords will oppose the construction of fortresses and hamper all progress. Others may not. Third one, which may be what happens if a Dark Lord goes down. There must always be a Dark Lord. If one goes, another will take, which could be a PC. Yep. I think this is... I think all of us GMs are thinking fairly along the same lines about the next Dark Lord could be you. An end goal to run a fun campaign. Or is that maybe the end goal, right? I don't know. I'm losing track. Yeah, that's probably the end goal. And I don't even remember what the last one. Each campaign will be a unique experience based on domain. If they're in a desert-themed area with mummies and sandstorms, it will be a vastly different experience from island hopping and the infested domain. Yep, absolutely. Great stuff there from our own No Fun Allowed, trying to help out Delirium Rostello. But that was a good question. A little bit more, had more to it than I originally imagined when I thought they were just talking about that Ravenloft initial module. Okay, I'm at almost. I'm closing in on 2 hours. Let's see if I can get there. All right, puzzles in OSR historical settings. Are we interested in puzzles in OSR historical settings? I need some like insta polling where I could just put some polls in here so I could say a question out, get a quick straw poll of some results, and then we'll check it out. Posted by Victorian Chan. And they link to Carmen Sandiego, as in where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? Anyone that make use of historical settings in their OSR RP got any use from puzzles. Personally, I use Sengaku, and am including Melancholia 1 in my RP, which may be a little tangential to studying places and people, but I thought I'd put the query out, see what comes back. I have no idea what those two are. I don't know Sengaku, and I don't know Melancholia 1. And then the only comments are, do you mean how to use puzzles in a historical campaign without making it seem out of place? Or which enjoyed? Okay, I tend to use the world as a puzzle. I don't tend to throw in there, here's a Sudoku in the middle of the dungeon for you to work on. I don't love them as a player. And unless they're pertinent to the characters, I don't love them from that either. So I don't know much to offer on that one. Puzzle question was a bust, but not because of Victorian Chan, just because of my limited experience or my little limited love for puzzles in the game. So here we go. Is this just a map? The Grand Tactical Map. All right, this one might be good. Posted by Talk to the Twizzard. So I'm wondering if any setting has a large enough, varied enough region starting out with castles and cities and layers in between suitable for a game focusing on conquest and domain play. I'm really thinking Godbound, so the PCs are just prophesized end-of-the-world type walking apocalypses waiting to happen. So placed with some religious details and maybe some gonzo inherent to the system will be good. I don't really want to take over Forgotten Realms, but if there was something with that level of breadth but focused on maybe the military campaign aspect, Carcosa seems too bleak, Morganfort, the Western lands, too empty, Ilmire, too small, the Land of 1,000 Towers is also rather small but has promise, Yun Suan is enticing but doesn't have the stats of troops thing I'm looking for, Planescape is too big, Conquest hardly matters, UVG, I think Ultraviolet Grasslands is too wastelandy, I don't know, Judges Guild map seems impenetrable, sort of want some generic fantasy I can subvert with Godbound's weird divine punk kind of secret history. Maybe there's a game system even better suited to armies and empires than even Godbound. Do I need to make my own? An echo resounding style. Whew. I would say Greyhawk probably has a good, solid, it's got enough detail, is fairly fantasy generic. It's certainly, get to Mystara, kind of certainly it's big enough, I would say. I don't know, I feel like you could just throw something together. If you're just interested in sort of the big picture stuff and you're going to drop your own things in there, I don't think like it would be too much to put together yourself. I'm not sure on that one. It's kind of a cool idea. Oh, here, take my upvote, talk to the Twizzard. But I don't have one. I don't have one that I think would be perfect. Doesn't Godbound have a setting? I don't know. I read Godbound a while back ago. It seems really cool, but I don't know enough about it offhand. If anyone knows, post in chat. I can update it. Update my response. All right, solo play. I have not done any solo play. Here we go. Travel and exploration. Okay. Submitted by Sir Bronwyn. I'm doing some hacking, and I'm curious if there are particular games folk recommend for travel and exploration framing systems. I want to keep it as simple as possible. I find my table responds well when there is a clear framing of the challenge, that they know how much freedom they have and where the limitations are. I'm looking for dungeon exploration as well as wilderness exploration and games with travel checks like Ultraviolet Grasslands, which I have not read. Also interest me. All right, first take the upvote. So the one of them's already talked about the Necropraxis hazard system, which is good. I thought Into the Word and Wild, which I covered on this channel, is good. No Fun Allowed, talking about Adventure Conquer King. Is that for the domain, that other one, the Grand Tactical Map, or the travel? This question on travel, or both? Who's to say? Let me know. No Fun Allowed, which question you were responding to. So I have the context on that one. Into the Warden Wild, which I did covered last week, the week before. It's good. Necropraxis Hazard Systems, another one that could work. I mean, I don't know. I feel like the vanilla rules, like in Basic Expert, are not terrible. And the way they've been reformatted in something like OSC or Lamentations of the Flame Princess or any number of different OSR / retro clone type products, I feel like work fine. RH41N3. I'm not quite sure if how I'm supposed to pronounce that. If not, just like that. Says that they're the ones that recommended Necropraxis. Oh, the One Ring, and whatchamacallit is 5th edition Middle Earth. If you want something that's what's more formatted specifically for a D&D like system, also has good stuff for it, for specifically the Wilderness and assigning roles, which I think they got in here too under this RH41N3's answer. Gabriel Q talks about something called Warpland, which I don't know about, but might be interesting. Okay, No Fun Allowed. It's talking about the domains. Adventure Conquer King, yeah, does seem well suited to domains. Absolutely. Let's see. All right. Oh, so I guess Gabriel Q is the author of Warpland. I have no idea what Warpland is. Maybe I shall have to check it out. Taking a vote. Let's see. Goblinish talks about a 1-page procedural tool, which they published, called In the Heart of the Unknown. Oh, they the Hexflower folks. Let's take a look at this. Oh, it's Goblin's Henchman. I see. So yeah, okay. Procedural hex crawling engine. That's cool, but beyond the scope of this right now. Let's see. Oh, so someone else brought up Adventures in Middle Earth. Yep, that is a good one. And someone who is giving up to it for them. Let's see. They're developing a game called Adventurous, and they have some dungeon exploration rules, which they link to a Google Drive doc, but they just break it down, or they condense it to each move the players make takes 10 minutes. All right, that's kind of at least the norm as far as I'm concerned. D6 to keep track of each 10 minutes that passes, so the GM adds D6s to a pool for each move the players make. If the players make noise, the dice are rolled but not reset. At the end of an hour, meaning when the pool consists of 6 D6, the pool is rolled and reset. For every 1 and 2 that is rolled, something bad happens. The more 1s and 2s, the worse. The simple yet enjoyable system. This is a simple yet enjoyable system that achieves multiple things. The players feel suspense as they see the dice getting piled up in the pool they know is bad for them. Keeping track of time is automatic, and knowing when to relight torches, take rest, recast spells, etc. is easy since you know when 1 hour has passed. Finally, it makes players think twice about their course of action should they break down the door they failed to pick. Might lead to treasure, but it might also attract monsters since the pool of dice will be rolled due to the noise. Hope you like it. I'll permanently link to this one. That way people can check that out. It seems like there might be some cool stuff in there. Maybe I'll go into the we'll take a look at that Google Doc. And that'll maybe this will be the last thing we do. Post this. Okay, and then let's take a look. I will post a link to this. Looks like a nice document. I thought it would be more rough. This looks. They did a fine job. Okay. So this is from something they're going to be calling Adventurous. Exploring dungeons. Exploring dungeons is commonplace for adventurers. Whenever the players spend time in a dungeon, they need torches to shed light, and they might need food and water if they're going to spend a fair bit of time down there. In short, the players need supplies. What is a dungeon? A dungeon can be many things: a mad wizard's tower, a sewer system, a cave, an abandoned mine, or an ancient tomb full of undead. All right, first of all, I would put what is a dungeon above exploring dungeons. If we're going to define it, why don't you define it before you talk about exploring it? Dungeon moves. Much like combat, dungeon exploration is divided into turns. During each turn of exploration, the group of PCs can make one dungeon move, bolded, together as one unit. A dungeon move is an action such as search a room for traps, carefully pick the lock of the big wooden door, or study the mechanical contraption to try and figure out how the trap works. A dungeon move takes roughly 10 minutes. Thus, each round of exploration is roughly 10 minutes. All right, that's pretty much standard. That's basically the bog standard dungeon exploration, but it never hurts to continually reinforce that. Let me just... all right. The GM can allow for 2 moves to be performed during the same turn, but this would be an exception and is generally only suitable when the party splits up. Yep. Time and encounters. To track time spent exploring a dungeon, the GM uses 6 six-sided dice. For every round of exploration in the dungeon, the GM adds one of these dice to a pool at the center of the table. When 6 moves have been made, 1 hour has passed, and new torches need to be lit. It is also time to roll the encounter dice. All right, rolling the encounter dice. The dice that are gathered at the center of the table represent the current tension and danger level of the dungeon. The pool is rolled in 2 different scenarios. Scenario 1, recklessness. If the PCs make a move that causes noise, the GM immediately rolls the dice currently in the pool. The dice are then put back in the pool, which continues to build. And then the second one is at the end of an hour. Once 6 dice have been placed in the pool, 1 hour has passed. New torches need to be lit, and other time-sensitive things need to be considered. At the end of an hour, all 6 dice are rolled. Once rolled, the pool is emptied, and the GM starts to build a new pool. I would actually do something a little bit different right off the bat. And I just thought of this now. It's that I like the idea of tension building as you're going through the dungeon. So one of the things I would do is over time in the dungeon, maybe up until you get to 6, that you would actually only remove all the dice but 1. For the first turn, for the first hour, then all the dice but 2 in the second hour. In other words, you would leave 1 die behind for each hour. And this way, this is experiencing that the dungeon's getting harder. It's reacting to you because something's happened during this hour. You roll some 1s, you roll some 2s, danger, things happening. I wouldn't want it all to just go away. Oh, we did that, and now, but an hour's passed. Now we're starting from scratch. No, you're not starting from scratch. You have things should be aware of you, and now you shouldn't have as much time. Things get tenser. Things move faster. So I think a system like this seems really cool for doing that kind of tension, but I want it to build. So I don't want it to just sag, right, or collapse because we got into an hour. But I really like it. And maybe you need to tweak it or something, right? Because what happens when you just get to 6? I'm not sure. I have to think about that part of it, but that's my feeling. Now let's get to what happens when you read the dice that you rolled. So you're supposed to count the 1s and 2s. So each die has about a 33% chance of it triggering. So if you only get 1, the effect is stress. The adventurers hear noise, sense a smell, or get some other glimpse of dangers that lurk in the dungeon. They have a feeling of dread that causes them to become stressed out. All actions taken until the party takes 2 turns to rest are made with disadvantage. I would maybe make that... Well, I guess I could see why they go 2 turns, because you're supposed to take 1 turn anyway. But maybe I would just say, in addition to the rest turn you're supposed to take. Again, it's not... He doesn't talk about that, but I do, because that's part of the rules. You have to rest 1... exploration turn out of the 6, maybe it's okay. Now you got to take a rest. So yeah, maybe 1 additional rest to the rest you're taking. Second effect. So if you rolled 2 1s or 2s amongst your dice, danger is approaching. The characters find themselves in a situation where it's just moments until the horrors of the dungeon are upon them. It might be a patrol coming their way, or that they have accidentally entered the guard barracks. Either way, they need to decide how to act right now or be the victim of the inhabitants of the dungeon. All right, so you roll 1, you pick up stress. You roll 1 or 2, you pick up stress. You roll 2 1s or 2s. Something is close, but you do have time to prepare, but danger is coming. Now, if you roll 3, you miss the approach. Danger is here. The party's surprised by whatever is living in the dungeon or its minions. Combat ensues, and the opponent starts. So, yeah, you were totally surprised, which is bad news. And then if 4 or more, you get a big setback. Something really bad happens. Situations are environment specific. Some examples include the corridor collapses, the floor collapses, part of the dungeon is flooded, the volcano erupts, etc. Yes. I don't know what's worse. What do you think is worse? Because especially at low levels, surprise combat where the opponent has the jump on you is really bad. I mean, really bad. You're probably not going to have things prepped up. Depending on what direction they come from, you might catch your rear guard. If that's your wizard, your thief, or your thief's probably in front. Your wizard, somebody else. One nasty surprise attack could be enough. Could be bad, but of course, corridors collapsing or other things happening that trap you in the place are also really bad. But I might have to kind of play around with this and see if I can tweak it into something, because there's some definitely possibilities here. I like where their head's at, for sure. Light and dark places. You need 1 light source for every 2 people in a party. That's interesting. A party of 4 adventurers will need 2 torches to shed enough light in a dark place. Torch burns for 1 hour. Low light. If the party does not have enough light sources, everyone except the light bearer receives disadvantage on all rolls that require sight. And if they have no light, can't do anything. Yeah, the Gru is coming. Remember that a torch occupies 1 hand. Yep. That's definitely interesting. I don't usually play around with how many torches per party members, but that's a good, interesting idea. Bob Mosdell says, and of course you could use different die sizes for easier or harder dungeon situations. That's true too. Yeah, because using that 1 or 2, maybe that would be a good thing. You could start. That might be a good thing, Bob Mosdell. I actually like that a lot. I should have to remember to write that down. I think that's an excellent idea of maybe start off as a D8 or D12, D10, D12 with 1 D2s. But then as each hour, your die size goes down 1 until when it's really bad, it's D4s. So yeah, that is that. Bob Mostel on the money, bringing the fire at the end of the stream. And then they have a bit on resting in a dungeon. Resting in a dungeon is a dangerous undertaking. In order to get any kind of meaningful rest, the adventurers need to find a secure area where the risk of being found is minimal. Otherwise, will not be able to rest. Yep, that's certainly true. We got no fallout in the heart of the deadliest dungeon of the world. You get 1 D2s. Yeah, that's it. It's just how much pain, how much bad things are coming. And then Bob Moss also says you can do things with different patterns of dice too. Maybe 3 6s and something good happens. Yeah, that's true. You could get a reprieve, right? If you roll some 6s and maybe your die size doesn't go up that. And if you roll more, then you could get a lot into like your distribution of dice. How many 1s and 2s versus how many 5s and 6s. Yep. You can have a lot of fun with that, man. I'm gonna have to think about that and flesh it out, because that is really good. I really like it. And this is on they've linked to it in their Google Docs, which I did put in the chat. I'll remember to put it in the show notes. I gotta add it. Let me add this to my collections. Oh, interesting. It doesn't show up in the. So I noticed my overlay from Explorer does not, where I'm adding it to my collection, does not actually show up in the sharing of the window. That's interesting to know. All right. I think that's where I'm going to wrap things here. It's unfortunate because I feel like I have more folks hanging out in the stream than an hour ago. But man, I've been going for 2 hours. If you can't hear it, I feel like my voice is about to be shot. There's a lot of good stuff. I encourage you, if you joined here late and you only caught the tail end of it, there's a good part of the beginning where I covered this article, which I will show again. I think was a really good talk, and I probably went on about too long, which is when we went over this article, maps from my games, lessons I've learned. Really thought it was a good piece with some interesting lessons, and of course we did a bunch of stuff in the Reddit OSR. Hey, if you stumbled on this and you like the sound of what we were talking about, I did give a thumbs up, which is excellent. Let me make sure to give a thumbs up to that, which I did. go ahead and throw me a channel subscription. I appreciate a lot. Doesn't really hurt you at all. It just lets you know when I'm streaming and doing stuff like this, so you can get in and catch stuff from jump. I do have channel memberships open, which you can see there in the chat. So if you're interested in supporting the channel in that way, there's that. I also have I got coffee. I've got Patreon, which links are in the descriptions. So I got those ways if you want to support the channel. But hey, stuff like subscriptions and just giving these a thumbs up, and of course sharing them wherever you share videos, it helps me out. But have a great rest of your afternoons, everybody. Hey, Marcelo, thanks for the kind words. I'm glad you like it. Yeah, I kind of stumbled upon this format sort of accidentally, but I really like it a lot too. Just to reset as far as programming notes, starting a new gig at my new day job next week. Don't know what my schedule is going to be like. I'm going to have to figure all that stuff out. So there might be a lack of these videos for a while until I get things, find my new equilibrium, so to speak. I have been cutting these up into smaller bits, DM tip style videos on the particular topics and posting them up. So I'll try to keep a nice flow of videos. So you should see some of those trickle out. Obviously, I apologize if you're in the stream and you've heard it and then you come back and it's the same content again. But I've found that a lot of folks, or there's some folks that really get into watching the streams, and there are folks that I think they look at the amount of time, right? This thing's going to get up there. This is going to be live, and then people are going to look and go, 2 hours. I don't have time for 2 hours. And in that case, the shorter videos, I think, work better for them. So I kind of feel like I hit different audiences. Some folks get in the streams and are here for that and will watch the whole thing live or listen to it later. And then some folks, that's too long, but the 15, 20, 30-minute clips work better. So I've been trying to figure out the flow of that. But so far, I've had really nothing but positive comments about those. So the one good thing is that even though I might not be able to stream these next week, depending on my schedule, or stream other stuff, I have a backlog of these kind of segments that I will break out and post separately. So again, apologize for folks who will see it as just sort of duplicated content, but bear with me and remember that there's some folks that the longer stuff doesn't hit them, or they don't have time for it. They don't have it all. So for them, the shorter stuff works well. Fred Daniel says, enjoy these streams each time I'm able to catch them live and watch them later if I miss them. Oh, great. I am super glad. And Dave Mills says, good luck with a new job. Well, thanks very much. But hey, everyone, have a great rest of if you're here live, have a great rest of your Friday. If you're watching or listening to this later, have a great rest of whenever you happen to be watching or listening to this. As usual, game on. Talk to you later.